Well, we're joined here by our new livestock entomologist, Dr. Jonathan Cammack. So Jonathan, before we hop in to see what's happening in the insect world, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I started my position with OSU and the Extension Service back at the end of January. And previous to that, I was with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in the Pesticide Safety Education Program.
Yeah, well, let's just jump right in. You know, it's mid-July, right in the dog days of summer. So what's the tick situation going on right now?
Right now we don't have to really worry about too much with the adult ticks. You know, usually a lot of the times that's what people are worried about because they're the kind of bigger ones that are more visible. But what we do have to worry about are those little ones that we can't really see too well, particularly the nymphs and the larvae of Lone Star ticks. We're kind of right in the thick of the season right now when those are starting to become pretty numerous in the environment. So we need to take precautions to protect ourselves from getting bit by those.
And around here we refer to those as seed ticks, right?
Right, seed ticks, that's going to be those little tiny immature ticks that are like about the size of a seed, kind of how their name suggests, and they typically just walk up to the top of some grass or a bush or something and they stand there with their front legs up in the air, kind of wave around like this, waiting for a host to walk by. And oftentimes we're unlucky enough to be that host for those immature ticks, and you'll walk by and end up with, you know, potentially hundreds of them on you, using your body as their you know, one of their early blood meals.
And that's really concerning because Lone Star ticks carry alpha-gal syndrome, right?
Correct. Well, maybe not necessarily carry it, but they're implicated in how we get it. So we don't quite know the association and kind of the biological side of it. It's not a true pathogen or a disease like a lot of things that ticks can vector, but there is an interaction between some proteins in their saliva and our body that causes us to then become allergic to red meat.
And this is just really important this time of year because a lot of producers are out, you know, checking on their animals, and so it's just a really good reminder to wear, you know, repellent if you have it.
Right. If you have, you know, genes that you can treat with a permethrin, a synthetic pyrethroid, that works really well to not only repel the ticks but also kill any of them that might try to crawl up your pants. If you do decide to treat your clothing with the synthetic pyrethroid, make sure you follow the instructions on that label, and it's going to tell you to treat your clothing while you're not wearing them. So it's best to have the pair of pants that you want to be treated. You lay them out on a flat surface, spray them really well with that material, let it dry. It's going to take probably 12 to 24 hours, and then you can wear those pants you know, while you're out working with your animals. And then after you are outside, either working with your animals or even just for, you know, kind of fun and you know enjoying the outdoors right now, make sure that you conduct a tick check to make sure that you don't have any you know, present on your body and trying to blood feed.
So shifting to livestock, is there really much of a concern this time of year when it comes to ticks?
Right, they're going to be on the animals, right? That's just something that we can't really do anything about. So keep an eye on the animals. If you do see large numbers, you know, you could treat the animals with, you know, just kind of a general insecticide such as a pyrethroid. It will help with control a little bit, but you know, other than that, there's not much we can do. Dewormers will have a little bit of an effect on them, but most producers aren't really deworming at this point in the year.
Yeah,
that was typically a springtime event.
Yeah, and it's just mainly just us that we need to be concerned with. All right, well, what about horn flies? I mean, this is the time of year that you can just look out and just cattle are covered with them, so I imagine that is definitely an issue.
Yeah, it's 100% is impacting the animals. We're, like you indicated, we're getting kind of into that kind of the early on peak where we start to see hornfly numbers really start to increase between now and maybe August and September. So if you haven't implemented any sort of control program yet or management program for those, you know, it's time. And whether that is using an ear tag on the animals that's got the insecticides in it that will help repel the hornflies, or even using a feed-through product that you can either buy as a mineral supplement or mix in with feed that the animals will ingest, and it passes through in the manure, and it will help control the larvae that are developing in, or eventually developing in that manure.
What about horseflies?
Yeah, horseflies are also out. They're, you know, a summertime problem as well. They're basically flying around in the environment, landing on the animals, biting them, getting a blood meal, and flying off. So they're very difficult to control because they spend so little time actually on the animal. One of the best things that we can do to reduce horsefly numbers would be to kind of manage things in the environment. And what we know is that areas that have high amounts of eastern red cedar also have much larger populations of horseflies. So, you know, maybe not something you want to tackle in the heat of summer, but definitely as things start to cool off, maybe implementing some cedar management as well.
And that's a really big concern because horseflies are one of the main vectors for anaplasma, right?
Right. They, you know, just like when we're vaccinating the animals, you know, we have to keep in mind, you know, not reusing needles between animals to prevent spreading anaplasma through a herd. It's essentially the same thing with the horseflies. They're flying around out in the environment. They'll land on the back of the animal. Their mouth parts are kind of like a pair of scissors. So they'll cut the animal and then drink that pool of blood up. And then if that animal is infected with anaplasma, then they're essentially flying around with a pair of contaminated scissors stuck to the front of their head. And the next animals they land on and bite could become infected.
And of course, if producers have any questions, they can always contact their local county extension office and even give you a shout if they just have any questions, right?
Definitely, that's why we're here.
Alrighty, thanks, Jonathan. Dr. Jonathan Cammack, OSU Extension livestock entomologist here at Oklahoma State University.